back to the vlog. This is Susie from Thread Quarters. Thanks for joining me again today. I am doing a bit of a spur of the moment filming. I got a new sewing machine this week. It is an early birthday present for myself. My birthday's in October, so it's very early, but the new craft house were doing a very good deal on the discontinued line Faff Quilt Ambition 2.0, and they were doing such a good offer on it that I managed to persuade my husband that I could get my birthday present early. I have quite a big birthday this year, so I thought it was worth the splurge. I've been wanting to upgrade for a long time, and I have been wanting a Faff in particular. I know everyone's got their favourite sewing brand. I have always admired Faff more from afar, to be honest. I do feel a little bit bad for my old singer. She has been doing very well for the last 10 years, but there were always a few things that she did struggle with, and I wanted to upgrade for some time now. So I was really excited when it arrived this week, and I really wanted to get sewing something, but I just didn't know what I should sew. Then I remembered I had a kind of a work in progress whip, but not really. It was just cut out ready to go, and it was this top. It's the Maya top by Marilla Walker, but with the alterations that you can find on the Tessuti blog. I'll put the link down below for it if you want to copy it. So it has additional cuffs. The sizing is different, so it's a lot wider with a narrower sleeve, I think is the way they've done it. I can't remember because I cut it out so long ago. Also, it's not a facing, it's a bias binding, and I did it in pink because that's what I had, and I just thought it was quite fun, and it's cropped a lot. So I thought I would see if I could whip it up this week and test out my sewing machine, but also I thought, oh sure, let's film it and it can be a bit of a little sew along vlog. It's not a tutorial. I'm not going into great depth about how to do each step like I have done in the past with my proper tutorials or sew-alongs. But this is just a sit back, put it on in the background while you're doing some sewing maybe, and sort of like a sew with me type vlog, just for a bit of fun. I thought you might find it interesting. So without further ado, let's get on to the sewing. So this is my new Faff Quilt Ambition 2.0. Very excited to get sewing on this. So just giving you a quick shot of the machine before we get into the sewing. Excuse the lighting. The bright light on the machine has really played with the exposure of my videos, so I'm sorry about that. Anyway, let's get cracking. Here is my pattern pieces. That's the back piece there. I have had this wrinkled in a box for a long time, so I had to do a good bit of ironing to get it sorted. Anyway, I'm just pinning the shoulder seams and the side seams together, and then I'm going to sew those up with a narrow seam allowance, because I'm going to be doing French seams on this top just to get all the seams nicely enclosed, because this fabric frays a lot. This is a Rami linen from Textile Express. I'll put a link down below. It's really lovely, thick, luscious linen. I think it's made from the nettle plant. Don't quote me on that, but that's just my memory of it. But it is very nice. I have the rest of this fabric. I bought maybe 3 meters off it, and I've got it cut out as a Zadie jumpsuit. It is still cut out and I haven't sewn it yet, but I had just enough fabric left over to squeeze this top on, which is why it's quite a cropped version. but as you'll see, I quite like the end width of it, or length of it I should say. So shoulder seams and side seams have been sewn, and now I am just trimming the seam allowances to make sure that I don't have any sticking out when I turn them the other way around and do my second line of stitching. It's just a basic French seam. I'm sure you guys know how to do it. Just giving the seams a really nice press, and I decided to grab my sleeve press, can't think of what you call it, sleeve board, because I thought it would be a bit easier for getting those shoulder seams done, and also this little fiddly bit here under the arm is a little bit tricky for ironing nice and flat, so tried my best. It's still a little bit crooked, but it was a good enough job. And just pinning in place and sort of using my fingers to get those seams right on the edge there, and pinning in place ready for my next set of stitches. And it's back over to the sewing machine and going over those seams again to finish them off. Trying to use my tie-off system that this machine has, and I am still getting to grips with it. If you've got any tips or tricks with how it works properly, please let me know. I think I've figured it out, but I keep trying different methods for the tie-off system, so yeah, still learning. It's all part of the fun, isn't it? So this version of the Maya top has a bias binding neckline instead of facings, as per the Tessuti blog post that I am sort of following. And I'm also using a Tessuti method for putting on bias binding, which I really, really like. I think it's really excellent. Gets a lovely flat finish. Your bias binding isn't sitting away from your body when you're wearing your clothes, so it's really, I rate it really highly. So I will put the link down in the description box if you'd like to try it out for yourself as well. So just folding this bias binding, yes, pink, because it's all I had and I thought it was quite a nice contrast. Folding it in half, ironing it in half, and then putting a double layer of the bias binding around the raw edge of the neckline, rather than, you know, if you know, the other method is to do it on the flat and then fold it over and sew it again. But this is Tessuti's method and I really like it. All the way around the neckline, leaving a little bit extra at the beginning and end. And I'm just stitching that in place with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I think. And as I say, leaving a little bit at the beginning and end of my neckline, which I will then join up in a second. So just bringing the two ends together so they're lying flat on the neckline, and I'm sort of finger pressing to mark where I need to sew them together. A little pin to hold it in place, and then I'm just going to sew back and forward along that crease that I created, and it should then fit my neckline perfectly. And it did, pretty happy with that. Just going to give it a little iron to flatten it down, trim down the excess, and then I will sew the little remainder down as well. Now in hindsight, I think the Tessuti blog does tell you to understitch your bias binding at this point, but I forgot to do that, so I am just ironing the binding up, and then I decided that I had quite a lot of excess in the seam allowance, so I'm just trimming that down so that when I fold the bias binding over, it'll completely cover it and it won't be peeking out. Slightly terrified I'm going to cut my top at this point. Folding the binding to the inside and then working out which way I'm going to be sewing and pinning my binding down appropriately with the pins pointing the pin heads pointing towards me as I'm sewing, so they're easy to remove. So all the way around, making sure it's lying nice and flat. And it's back over to the machine again to sew down the bias binding to the inside of my neckline. Sorry it does look so dark in these films, but it really was the contrast of the bright light that is on this new machine. It really is so bright, it's wonderful, it really does light up your sewing space. And it's wine o'clock, woohoo! So now I'm going to do the cuffs, just removing the pattern and just sew the raw edges together. I realised that my cuff piece was an awful lot wider than my top piece, so I'm measuring there to make sure I sew the right distance to make my cuff the right size to fit my top. I don't know why it was so much bigger than my top. As I say, I have had this cut out for months and months and months, so I have no idea. Thankfully I noticed in time. So yeah, just trimming that down, and then you fold it in half on itself, and then that's your cuff. Raw edges get lined up with the sleeve of the actual bodice and line up the raw edges, pin it and sew it in place. Again, I'm doing a French seam on this because the fabric frays so badly. I just thought it would be the best way. It is quite bulky on this fabric, but because of this loose style of the top, it's really, it doesn't really matter too much. So because it's a French seam, I am attaching this to the inside of the top. This is the wrong side of the fabric that I'm sewing the cuff to at the moment. So there you go. I now need to trim that down, get all the frayed edges away and just a little bit of the excess seam allowance away so that I can then fold the cuff over onto the right side of the top, and I will give it a bit of a press, which you won't see me doing, and then sew this. This is me thinking, am I doing this right? It is always very confusing when I'm doing a French seam and I'm not 100% sure that I'm sewing it to the right side, the correct side of the fabric, but I did get it right, thankfully. So yeah, just doing sort of like a 1/4 inch seam here all the way around, and then I just repeat the process for the other cuff, which I don't bother showing you in this video. So there's a little bit of celebration at this point because I am sewing over loads of fabric here. The seam here is very, very thick, and in my old machine it would have really struggled, but it went over like a dream. So I'm having a little happy dance there because it was a good test to prove that, yeah, this machine is an absolute upgrade for me. So really delighted. And here we go. Here's another one. A little bit of help there. Needed to push that one under slightly, but still pretty good. Still really happy. So I am nearly there. I just have to hem this. So I am just trimming away as little as possible along the bottom edge there. I really have very little fabric to play with. I would have liked to have done a much deeper hem, but I just didn't have the fabric. As I said, I was using leftover fabric to make this top. Another option would have been for me to use bias binding for the hem, and I did want to do that, but I didn't have enough left of the pink bias binding. I didn't really want to add another colour of bias binding on the inside, so I'm just doing a really narrow hem here. Just folding it over on itself a couple of times, pinning it in place, and then I will sew that down. And I just left this little bit in to show you the difference in the lighting when my machine is not turned on, and then when it is turned on, it is actually a really bright room that I'm sewing in. I am not sewing in pitch black with just the light of my sewing machine. It is absolutely just my my camera struggling with the exposure of the really bright light on the faff and the surrounding. So I promise you, I am actually sewing in really bright daylight. Anyway, this is just me finishing off the hem, nice and easy all the way around, sewing over really thick seams again with ease, which is just a delight. Absolutely loved it. And then my top is finished. Yay! Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the sew along. I certainly enjoyed sewing it. I have had a lot of fun playing around with my new machine. I've probably mentioned a few times in the voiceovers that I'm still getting used to the tying off feature that the Pfaff has, because it's completely different from any machine I've used before. So you can give me your tips and suggestions down below there for what I might be doing wrong, if anything. I will take it all. I have been watching YouTube videos all about this sewing machine, and if you have this sewing machine and you do want the tutorials, I will put a link down below to, I can't remember the channel now, but they have done a full rundown of every single aspect about this machine, and it was amazing. I did read the manual too, because you know I like geeking out and stuff like that, but it was really beneficial watching the videos. Anyway, if you enjoyed this sew along, then please do give my video a thumbs up. I always appreciate that. Do subscribe if you like these sorts of videos as well, and hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss out on any future videos of mine. Until next time guys, bye!